So it's 2009, November, and I'm standing in the middle of a main road in downtown Copenhagen. It's about -10 degrees and my face is turning numb, and I'm surrounded everywhere by thousands of protesters yelling and chanting slogans. And just up ahead, about 100 meters away, is a line of riot cops in shields and helmets looking ready to do battle with us at any point. About 1,000 kilometers away, in about 3 days' time, my first law exam is going to take place. It suddenly occurs to me that I may have made a terrible mistake coming here. What the hell am I even doing here in the first place? I'm a first-year law student at a university in London. I've grown up in Singapore and was told all my life that protests and political action would only lead to riots and unrest, and we had no reason to protest anything anyway, so by right, we had no right or reason to march on the streets, ever. And this is exactly why I left Singapore for the UK. I wanted to figure out what it was like to live in a place where you were allowed to march on the streets to make your voice heard. I wanted to learn what it was like to put your body on the line for something bigger than yourself. I wanted to learn what it was like to change things by just being somewhere and being outside. I wanted to learn from and be inspired by people who thought nothing of spending their Saturday mornings standing outside Parliament buildings, shouting and waving banners. So I made lots of activist friends. And sometime during my first term in London, they told me about this massive demonstration happening in Copenhagen. There was going to be a huge UN climate change conference called the COP15 conference happening there that year. Thousands of leaders and ambassadors from all over the world would descend on the city and sign agreements about how they should, the right way, how they should actually deal with climate change. There was also going to be thousands of activists from all over the world going there as well. The idea was for them to march on the streets and get international media attention and get their own ideas and agendas about how they thought climate change should be tackled onto the table. They wanted to talk about things that they knew politicians would never dare talk about, things like destroying capitalism, getting rid of the fossil fuel industry, about the refugee crisis that they knew that climate change would ultimately bring. Their plan, ultimately, was to eventually crash the conference filled with world leaders, break through the doors and swarm the conference itself and get lots of media attention. I decided that this was a massive and amazing global movement that I had to be a part of. I decided that no matter, even though my law exams are going to take place a week after, I had to be a part of this because I believed that this was going to be a turning point in history. And I wanted to be a part of history. I wanted to be a part of this and save the planet. So I boarded a bus and rode it for about 24 hours with a bunch of activist friends from London to Copenhagen, because after all, what's the point of flying to a climate change protest? So we got to the city to find it had been taken over by activists. We got out of the bus and found everywhere were people like us, people with beards, dreadlocks, backpacks, torn clothes. It was like there was a huge activist convention happening at the same time. We were rushed to this place called Christiania, the squatted village in the middle of Copenhagen where people had set up this activist welcome center, and we were given, it's actually really well organized, we were given maps of the city and maps which showed us where all these warehouses and abandoned school buildings where we could stay in were set up. Danish activists had opened them up for free places to stay for activists around the world, and each of them had their own kitchen and cooking team so we could all have free warm food. And we are also told and given flyers which showed us exactly where to meet for every day's protest. So every day I found myself linking arms with other activists, marching down the streets, all of us from all different countries, everyone speaking completely different languages, but knowing the exact same chants somehow. And I felt something I had never quite felt before in my life. I felt like it was possible for people to overcome differences, to get together and try and change the world, that solidarity was a real thing that was actually possible. the last protest taking place on the last day of the conference was going to be the biggest and also the most dangerous. The idea was that we'd gather enough of us from all over the world and eventually march into the building and basically swarm the meeting itself. We went through trainings, and I soon realized exactly how dangerous it was going to be when they taught us how to protect our heads and necks from when the police started to beat us. When and not if they were going to beat us. And it suddenly occurred to me that I had no idea what was going to happen if and when they arrested me. I was the only Singaporean there, the only person not from the EU. I couldn't get a straight answer from anyone. Would I be deported? Would I miss my law exams? And worst of all, how many times are my parents going to kill me when they found out? So I find myself, it's too late to leave, this arrest is not an option, and so I find myself, so I don't know what to do, but the night before, I find myself joining the kitchen team, who are not going to the protest either, spooning out thousands and thousands of gallons of dumpster dive oatmeal. And it occurs to me then and there that maybe, last line, I'm doing my last line, that maybe I don't need to be part of this massive protest, that maybe history was not created by people who put their lives and bodies on the line. Maybe history was also made by the people working behind the scenes, outside of the limelight. And it occurs to me that maybe this is how I will change the world. Thank you.